Svelte debuted in 2016, and ever since then it has become the most loved JavaScript framework. Svelte is the most unique JavaScript framework because it's the only JavaScript framework that feels the closest to JavaScript and at the same time a powerful tool that you can use to build anything. In this video, we'll build a TodoList application with the most loved JavaScript. Okay, so hey guys, welcome to this Svelte Crash Course. We're gonna build a to-do list using Svelte from scratch. So first of all, I need you to run this command npm create svelte at latest, then the name of this app. Then in my case it was tutorial, yeah. And this is what I got. So when you run this command, this is what you get this kind of file structure. It could be anything you want here. It could be apples, but name it something relevant. So I'm going to quickly explain the file structure here. The vid config is for the bundler. SvelteKit uses a bundler. The Svelte config file is for our, this is a SvelteKit project, but we're going to be talking about Svelte. So I will explain that in a moment. So these are configurations about the router and other things. It's a README file, just a bunch of basic instructions. The package.json file shows the dependencies that we need, and you can say everything is a dev dependency. That's the thing about Svelte. It's a compiler. It is not an actual framework. So the package.json file shows that the dependencies are installed. This is, you don't need to worry about this. It's just for in case you want to upload it to GitHub or use Git to upload it. It's going to ignore some file. So the source folder is where you're going to be writing the code. The node modules is where your dependencies are. The source folder, in this source folder, you have routes. And if we had multiple pages in this application, we'll be using this, but we're not using multiple pages. So we're just going to do everything inside this page of Svelte. So, but one thing you need to know is that any file outside this routes folder is a component. It doesn't, not all Svelte files are routes. And the routing system, I explained it up in my SvelteKit video. So you can go and check out my SvelteKit video. But this, I just want to just explain Svelte. Okay, so first of all, Svelte components are divided into three. So I'm going to put this on the left. We have the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. So the script, okay. We can put our script here and we can write some basic HTML and say something like it's basic HTML. And by the way, to start the server, after you have created that, is to do npm run dev. This is not the server. Okay. So that's going to start the server in a second right now. So npm, so this is the JavaScript, and the style tag is where we write our CSS. So give that a moment. That's going to create that. Okay, we see that. Wonderful. So first of all, just the way it is in React, or if you have never used React before, we do curly braces to output dynamic variables. Like I'm going to make a variable called name, and we could say something like let name be equal to tech up. You can see this is how we output dynamic values. Pretty nice. Instead of using, if you have never used JavaScript, if you have never used a framework before, this is pretty nice. Instead of using inner text content or whatever. So let's get started building the TodoList application. First of all, we're going to have an input, and this is really nice about Svelte. For example, now if you wanted to grab this input value, how would we do it? We'll do it something like this. So we're going to say input value, input, can just leave that like so and say bind colon value, bind colon value input. And whenever the value of input changes, this value is going to change. So we could say something like this. This guy actually quite loves Svelte. So as we type, it's going to be changing. It's quite easy than doing something in React where you now do set, whatever. It's pretty easy. So we have the input value, which is nice, but actually let's put this in a form. And we'll refactor this in a moment. So we'll refactor this into multiple components, but I don't want to I don't want it to be too complex in the beginning so that you know why we actually use components. So we're gonna have a submit button and maybe a H1 so that we know why we're here to do our app. Okay, nice. So now I want to have a variable. So let's to do's equal to an empty array at default. So we want to listen to an event, and the way we listen to events by saying on colon whatever the event is. In our case, it's going to be on colon submit. On colon is handle submit, and you can call it whatever you want. It's just a convention I like using. It makes it quite nice. And the event object is automatically passed through us. And if you wanted to pass in anything like an argument here, you can't do it like this and say, so pass in some argument like this and say some argument, because this will run immediately. If you wanted to pass in some argument, you will do it like this, an anonymous arrow function. This is how you pass in some arguments, whatever. But we're not passing in any argument to our file, and by default, the event object is passed in to this function. So I'm passing in submit. So what do we want to do now? We want to grab the value of the to-do text and add it to the to-do. But the way we're going to do that is going to be something like this. So we're going to say to-dos dot push, and we want to push whatever was in to-dos before to make sure. This is how we spread. So this is just to make sure that it doesn't override it. So we're just I'm just going to make sure it doesn't override it. Oh no, we can just say push indirectly. Can just say push. They want to push an object to do text, and the to do text is going to be whatever the input is at that moment. I want the ID. This is very important. To generate a random ID, we're going to say crypto. This is not actually has anything to do with cryptography, but it's very easy. We say generate random UID. Very easy. So what we want to do is that we want to cycle for each to do's. We want to render something out, and the way we cycle it is by using the each statement. So each to do as to do each. So for each to do, what do we want to do? Simple. Just render out a sorry. This is going to be inside a UL. Then we'll scoop this inside here. The reason why we can't put the UL inside here is that for each to do is going to render a UL, which is wrong. For each to do, we want to render out an LI with to do dot text, to do text, sorry. Don't you get each to do as to do, so to do dot to do text. Save. And by the way, you might need to download a Svelte extension because you're not going to get this syntax highlighting by default. You can see I have this Svelte extension there, so make sure to download that. Hey, okay, let's click on submit. It doesn't work. Let's open the browser. We might have done something wrong somewhere. Oh, we don't have any errors. Let's see. Let's check the value of to-dos. Oh, sorry, we can't do that. Let's just console.log to-dos here, okay? Console.log to-dos. Always, this just, I kind of know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it for you guys so that you guys know how to debug. Oh, you see, we can see to-dos here. To do text. Nice. And when we click on hey, nice. So the problem is coming from here. It's not being rendered out properly. And a simple way to fix that is that in the beginning, there are no to-dos. That's what the problem is. So what we want to do, we want to check if there is to-dos, render out an if block, and each block. So this is just like for each or map, whatever. It goes through each individual to-dos and render out to do the text. So test. You can see if we open it, we can see that we have the to-do text here. So why isn't it running? I can see that the ID is generated, the ID is different, even though the individual text is the same. So there must be something wrong. Let's just debug. Give me a sec. Okay, yeah, as I said, I was kind of like playing with you guys here. I actually knew what's wrong. So what is wrong is that this is why we don't use push in Svelte. We do not use push. And I'll explain why in a second, but let's remove the push, okay, and set to do's equal to an array of what was in to do's before and now. Okay, let's see if it works. Do you Let's ask the question, do you work? It works. Boom, boom, it's working. So why is it working? Why is it working? Well, the reason why it's working is that CircuitKit, that push doesn't trigger a re-render, in the sense that when we're using push, it doesn't re-render the component. But when we do use equals to sign, it's going to tell the components, hey, to-dos has changed. Okay, anybody that is using to-dos, re-render. So what we just want to do now is that we just want to have a span here and say something like X. And the span is going to have a, on click, it's going to have handle delete. And we're passing in an argument, so we must put it inside this kind of arrow function like so. And what we want to do is I want to pass in todo.id. So the ID is going to be useful to us we are whenever we want to delete a to do. So constant handle delete is going to be equal to, okay, event. Okay, sorry. Okay. So what we want to do, okay, actually this is not you are taking in the ID. I want to say to do's the filter. And by the way, we're going to save this inside in a variable. New to do's is going to be equal to do's dot filter. And by the way, filter doesn't change the original array. It's going to be equal to do. And what we want to return is to do dot id not equal to the ID. So essentially, we want to return every single to do that is not equal to the one that we clicked. So what's going to happen? The one that we clicked is going to go away. So to do's is going to be equal to new to do's. So check it out. Check it out too. Okay, so let's click it. It doesn't work. Okay, there must be something wrong with our function. Oh yeah, sorry. We have to put a not equals to. Save 112. Okay, so it does work. Okay, at these simple points, we have made considerable progress in our to-do list application. But if we back forward a little bit, our components is really messy. For us to just do everything in one file like this, it's a lot inefficient. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna come to the source folder and make a new file. We're gonna call this render dot svelte, or we'll just call it, to be more specific, render to do's dot svelte. Yeah, so inside render to do's dot svelte, what we want to just do is I want to just cut everything here and paste it here. And by the way, we'll put in that URL as well. Okay, save that. Okay, what we just have to just do now is that we have to import it. So render to do, oh sorry, Visual Studio Code normally onto computer. So we'll import it at the top here. We say import render to do from dot forward slash render to do dot svelte. I think we should be able to put this inside the source folder because everything in the source folder with a plus page is actually the page. So this is not going to be in another route. And so it has updated the import. Very smart of you, Visual Studio Code. So we just want to just say render to do like so. But everything is not over here because this component uses data. It requires that to do. It uses handle delete. So we have to accept those arguments. So we have to pass in those things as props. So passive, we can just pass in to do's as to do's. And what we can do for as for handle delete, we just pass it in like so. Handle delete. Okay, so what we have to do now is accept those stuff. So export handle delete and export. Yeah, we're actually importing, but it's called export. Yeah, I know it's pretty weird to do. But we have to put in a let. As you can see, it's giving us some error. Export let this. And what it just shows that these two things are from another component. So save this and let's see if this still works. Test. It still works. You can see that we are modularizing our code, making our code more easier to read. Yes, but we're not going to make a component for this one. We're only going to make a component for this one. You can see this is how components helps with resumability. One thing I want to talk about is on mounting. So in SvelteKit, your application runs on the server and on browser. For example, let's just console log a from the terminal. Save. If we refresh this, where are we going to get that console log? We get it in the browser and we also get it in the server. So to prevent this from happening, we can run a function called on mount, and you have to import that from Svelte. Mine is already auto imported. So what this function is that it runs when the component mounts in the browser. That is when the component is in the browser. If we save this and refresh this now, you see we only get here from the terminal. We don't get that in the terminal here. We get that in the browser. So this on mount is a good place for accessing browser APIs, because if we can do something like local storage here, save, let's just refresh that. It's going to give you an error because in the server there's nothing like local storage. So what we could do is, before we wrap up the video, I wanted to style this really quickly. I wanted to style this, or we could sync the data up with local storage. As you can see, we have a to-dos property here that is just empty. Also, before I finish, let's just style it up. Let's just style it up. Okay, so in SvelteKit, your styles are nested. So if I I could style something here, it won't affect the styles here. Okay. So what do we want to do here? Just simple stuff. And if you wanted to access anything global, we could just do something like this: global. So whether this will affect anywhere, every component. So global body, what do you want to do? Display flex, justify content center, names center, flex direction, colon. Okay. So as for the input, we want to give it a padding of 20 pixels. Sorry, 10 pixels, 20 pixels. The form as well. The form, we want to give the form a display of flex. Justify content, justify content, give it space between, or let's try space around. I guess that doesn't work right now, but it's still cool. Like I still quite like it like this. We'll give the body a light blue background. Background color light blue. We could adjust this a little bit, make it a little bit more lighter. Save. I like that better. And we'll give the body a font family of sans serif. Better. Important. Okay, that's cool. So on the button and the input, they don't quite have that font family yet. So copy, paste, paste. The button, I'm going to give this padding 10 pixels, 15 pixels. Background, black, color, white, and border radius 5 pixels or 1 pixel, just a little bit, 2 pixels, just tiny bit. Want to give it a cursor pointer, basic stuff. Can remove that. So in the render to do here, we want to have a style tag. Li, we want to give the li a display of flex. And by the way, let's just type in something to preview. Type in something. With maybe 500 pixels or 100%. Justify content, space between. Let's give this some fixed definite width, 500 pixels. That is a bit too much. Okay, I quite like that. Background white. Padding. So you cannot mind my sense of bad coloring or I'm not a UI developer. Actually, I don't know anything about UX. So this span there, you want to give it a background of red, a color of FFF, a padding of 20 pixels, and we'll remove this padding as well. I think 20 pixel padding is too much. So instead of giving it, okay, we can see align items center. Padding maybe 5 pixels. Yeah, so we could test it out here and said A2, A3, and we could delete everything like so. And on the span, let's just give it a cursor pointer, remove that for. So we could delete this, delete this, delete this, delete this. Nice project. That's it for building a TodoList application with Svelte. See you in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe.